Dun 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 dun. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Rodgon. I am a designer, drawing master, illustrator, cartoonist, animator, and all that nonsense. And I am here to draw with you guys today. So, I don't know what to draw today. So, I'm just going to be doing some warm up exercises that I normally like to do. Whenever I'm not feeling particularly uh, creative, I go about drawing a few things to practice my penmanship and to practice my accuracy and my cleanliness with my sketch lines. So the first exercise that I like to do is to make circles and then connect other circles to those circles and then try to be as accurate as possible when hitting those lines. Now, what is the purpose of this? The purpose of this is essentially just getting your dexterity to be doing like things automatically, right? You don't want to be thinking when you're drawing things like this. Do you have a schedule I can look for to lives? Love the content. Um, and then Kimichi, hello. Well, hello. Uh, I normally jump on around like 11 and a half, 10:30ish. I don't have a set schedule because I just haven't been able to schedule that perfectly into my life yet. I'm still in the weird transition of trying to figure out like how I'm going to be streaming my content. Um, and it's just it's sometimes it takes a while to get the motivation to be able to talk for a couple hours. So normally it's just around that time that it takes for me to get started. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can actually see what I'm doing. So in this case, I'm doing, let me still this camera. I'm doing just little circles to just get my hand warmed up and everything. Cool. Do you love drawing time though? Your tutorials are so helpful. Thank you. The other thing that I like to do is I like to draw cubes. And I like to draw cubes going in all manner of directions. Make tall ones, make short ones, make fat ones. And they don't have to even match the same perspective. Like you can just draw them completely separate. And see how everything interacts in like that little baby scene that you just did. You can do the same thing with the spheres too. You can turn these into spheres by drawing hemispheres on them. Or it could be more like a globe. Just as long as you learn how to subdivide a shape, it can be any way you want. But as long as it like maintains a level of perspective, it'll be okay. Other exercises that I like to do with basic shapes are cones. Cones are very important because I particularly use cones as half of what a foot is. To me, that is the shape of a foot. So to me, a cone is very important. Even though I might be visualizing this as 3, I could be visualizing this as a foot as well. My hand is very pretty. Well, I appreciate that. Um, I do have pretty hands for a guy. Um, I have been told that I looks like I have a manicure, and I don't have a manicure. Draw the Stussy S. What's the Stussy S? It's that one, right? It's the one that's like, but I forget how you do it. Uh, is it like this? I don't know. I forget how you do it. I know there's like a quick little simple way of doing it, but I don't even remember what it really looks like. So for now, this is the new Stussy. Stussy. It's the ripoff brand. Can we draw with you? Of course. Grab your sketchbook. Draw with me. I'm just gonna be answering questions today. It seems like that's one of the fun, like one of the most fun like type of videos that I get to do. So, I'll answer with my doodles. I'd love some shading advice, please. Okay, so shading. Remember, I'm doing this with a pen, so it might not come off as smooth as it would with a pencil. But bear with. Shading is all it's about the light sources, and the type of light that is hitting your object. So there's two kinds of lights. There's directional light, which could be from a lamp, a spotlight, anything like that. Imagine like a Hollywood spotlight. Right? That's hitting light in a singular direction. Now, there's ambient light, which is environmental light that's hitting from all directions at the same rate. So in this case, this might be like a little bit more targeted, right? Because it's just coming from this direction. And then ambient light is coming all from the same direction. So those two types of lighting are what are going to be affecting your shading for the most part. Right? There's also highlights and stuff like that, but highlights normally come from directional light. And I'll explain that in a second. So let's say we have these two and we want to give it some basic lighting. So we're going to assume that the light is literally coming just from the top left for both of them. Now with directional lighting, it's very easy because you can just literally follow the rays of light, and wherever that ray of light hits the floor, that is where your shadow goes. Okay? It's literally a mathematical equation or like algorithm. Just follow your ray of light to the edge of your character onto whatever surface it's hitting. So if this was a wall right here, right? If this was a wall, then this would hit the wall and then go up to this point. Because that's where it hits. Pew, pew. But if it was flat, it would go all the way out to the edge. So now that's just a cast shadow. With directional, it's very similar. But since this is more angular, this ends up being incredibly long. So it goes all the way to the other side, right? Because it's conical. So this light is going to be expanding as it goes out. Unless it's like a laser. But then a laser would be more applied like this than like this. Now let's talk about the actual like shadows inside of the actual shape, not just the cast shadows. With directional light, it's fairly easy to just calculate that if it's coming from this direction, all you got to do is draw a little bit of shade on that side. We're not taking any lives. Please don't ask. I just do not do those because most of the time it's just a deterrent from the lecture or from the class. So don't. Okay, thank you. The light is going to be hitting the opposite direction, or the shadows are going to be on the opposite direction of your sphere. So if you have your sphere and you have this subdivided, half of it is going to be in shadows. It's going to be a gradient, right? From like a darker shadow to a lighter shadow to no shadow, depending on how bright your light is. But it's essentially you subdividing that into little different gradients, and then just the opposite side is going to be shaded. Same thing with this, only with this one, you have to take into consideration that the light is expanding. So you might get a little bit less shadow on the back because the light is getting bigger and bigger as it goes. So it would cover more of the side of the edges. How do you combine the things into a good design? Let's finish this one and then we'll continue. So let's ask questions about lighting until we're done with this section, and then we'll move on to asking another question. How about that? That way, like, I don't feel like anybody's getting passed up. We won't get to everybody's questions, but the more interesting ones are the ones that I see whenever I'm done with the previous little thing. We'll go on to that one. All right, so let's keep that in mind. Okay, so another thing with shadows, it's not just having that, right? There's a couple different layers to shadows. So there is your normal shadow. Then you have your core shadow, which is the darkest part of your shadow. Then you have your highlight, or your normal color, but your highlight would be on top of exactly where the light is hitting. That'd be your highlight. Then you'd have a little rim of light, and that's normally reflective light. And that's the light that reflects off the ground and hits your object again. And that's really dependent on what type of texture you are trying to draw. In this case, it would be something really shiny. So that what happens is that the light hits and then it bounces back a little bit, creating a little bit of a reflective lighting to it. That's what that light is. Right, and then it all just blends together, and then you have, ta-da, your layers of shading. Now you're a cast shadow. So that's the layers. Layers, yay. Okay, the next thing you got to consider is if a light is a cast shadow or a form shadow. Why do you need to know that? Well, because one of them has soft edges and one of them has hard edges. And that's normally the distinction between shadows. So cast shadows are shadows that are being cast by a different object. Let's say we have a little sphere floating right there. And there's a light right here. Beep, 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 beep. The light is going to be hitting there, therefore casting a shadow on our object right there. Right? Directional light, boom. Now that would be a cast shadow. Cast shadows are normally sharp. Unless they get really far away from their subject and then they start getting fuzzier. But normally, cast shadows are sharp. Form shadows are the shadows that you use to form a shape. So learning the distinction between these two, then this is shape, shadows. If you learn to distinguish between these two, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to draw, let's say, noses, right? So we have a basic sphere. We can draw our little ball of the nose, our two little wings to our nose, and our nose bridge. Now, the nose normally has both of these types of shadows. That's why I like to use it as a reference. A lot of the shadows inside of this are shape shadows because they're telling you what the little shapes are within these areas. And then it also casts a shadow onto the nose or the nose lip. That's where your lips would end up being. Okay? Onto this surface right here, it casts a shadow that's a cast shadow, especially if the light is coming from this direction. So that's a good example of what a cast shadow versus a shape shadow is. So keep those in mind whenever you are, try to distinguish them whenever you are doing. So anytime that you need to form a shape with your shadow, like to make it voluminous, that's a shape shadow, and it should be softer. A cast shadow is anything that's being like casting a shadow, like my hand right here, it's casting a shadow. My pen, it's casting a shadow. The closer it is, the sharper it is. But the farther we get, look at what happens to it. It dilutes. It becomes like it's watering down, right? So that's what happens with cast shadows. They're really sharp if they're really close, but they start getting really, really fuzzy as they go up. But they're never going to be as fuzzy or as soft as something that's determining the shape of an object, like my finger. Like this is a very gradual shadow, right? Almost undistinguishable. Even at a distance, that's distinguishable. So that's the difference. That's what you got to keep in mind. All right, so we are done with that. That's enough tips. Yes, so the under the nose, it's cast shadow because it's close to the tip of the nose. So if we have our nose, depending on how far away our nose is from our lip, whenever there's light that casts in a certain direction, that is going to cast a shadow on this area. Right? So that's what happens. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up, or I'm just going to wait until one of you guys asks a question while I go in and use a highlighter to enhance my drawings a little bit. So you guys feel free to ask stuff. I'm going to be here for a while. All right, so 10 new messages. Hold on. Okay, thank you. I love you, mate. Oh, can you teach me how to draw an arm? Okay, let's start with that. How do we draw an arm? That sounds like an interesting one. All right, so an arm consists of a couple things, and we talked about this yesterday as well. And we went over it pretty quickly, but let's do a little bit more detailed explanation of how I draw my arms, at least. This is not by any means the only way to draw arms, and this is not the definitive way to draw arms either. The pen I use is a big round stick pen. I just love these things. They don't bleed. They don't give you the gunky stuff that other pens have. The blue ones are even better. But the black ones just tend to look a little bit better with sketchwise. So I normally go with the black ones. But the blue ones are the best. Like, I use those for years. Okay, an arm. An arm, normally when we start learning how to draw arms, we learn how to draw them as stick figures. Right? Stick figures into our boxy hands. So we're going to use this as the basis of everybody's learning from now on, okay? So I'm going to consider that everybody can draw at least this. Now, if you are able to draw 2 sticks of the same size and the hand, we have a starting off point. Now, having this in mind, we're going to add stuff to each one of these sections. And as long as you learn how to add those parts to those sections, you're going to be able to draw arms a lot better by the end of today. So the first thing we have is 2 sticks of equal size. Cool. The top part is going to be my shoulder. And the shoulder is going to go around this shape depending on how much you need of a shoulder. So if you need less shoulder, if your character is really skinny, just draw it really close to the shoulder joint. Otherwise, give it a little bit of volume because, you know, people have muscle. People have muscle structure. And we're considering this to be just the bone, right? We're going to consider these lines that we drew, these are our bones. Because that's literally how we learn to draw. So we're going to consider this and we're going to apply real anatomy to this. So we have our shoulder that goes about, I don't know, about 1/3 of the way down. Depending again on how much like you want your character's shoulders to be. Like this could be enhanced, this could be reduced. But normally about 1/3 of the arm could be easily like the muscle structure for that. Underneath, and it also has the shape of a little tear. Okay, this is kind of what the muscle structure looks like. So you can see it as a little petal. You can see it as a little heart. Anything that has a relative pointy shape on the bottom and an input. This is from the top, right? Because this is where your collarbone connects. So that's what you do to get the top shape. From here, if you split this in half, this front part would be your bicep. Your bicep is the flexy part of your arm that looks really cool whenever you go like, yeah! Right? You're like, yeah, arm wrestle me, bro! Yeah! Right? That's the big muscle that every guy likes to like show off whenever they're like curling or like whatever. So this is your bicep. Your bicep either goes in and squishes in like it like balloons out, or it extends all the way through. Like it either curls in to create this flexy like motion, or it extends out. This little space, little gap that gets left behind each time needs to be considered as well. So whenever I draw it, I just like to draw it as a little extension of the bicep. So I draw my bicep and I draw a little extension. That's going to be let me. I just knocked out little Rod. It's this little area right here. Oh no, disco lights. No, not disco lights. Not right now, Rod. Okay, so this little area at the top of your forearm is this little gap that I draw. Let me see. Then from there, we have our tricep, which is, if you're not defining it like all muscular type, it's just a very similar shape. Only instead of curling up here, it curls up in the back. So it normally gives you like this little step look. But normally you can just draw it like a normal muscle. The tricep normally leads to the elbow underneath it. So within this area, we have drawn a shoulder, a bicep, a tricep, the little gap in front, and the elbow. Now, the forearm is where a lot of people get hung up on. The forearm is just going to be like a chicken drum. Right? And that's essentially what you're going to be drawing, like a drumstick going into your forearm. But understanding where those muscles go helps you not just draw weird shapes. So what we're going to be doing is you got to understand that this is your bone, right? This is your bone. So your bone has width. And then the muscles of your wrist are just muscles going around that bone. They're going around the bone. So, and then there's normally no bone at the bottom third of your wrist. It's more so just like really, really just muscle underneath your wrist. Like if you have your wrist right here in your hand, most of the muscle that you have on your wrist and your forearm is underneath. It's not necessarily on top. Right? It's all like right here. So those are the shapes that go into it. So you can just simplify this stuff like a little chicken drum. So we have bicep, bicep, and then you end up with something relatively cool. Now, a couple things about the arm. If you want to really get better at understanding like how this connects, you can think of this upper arm, like part of the arm, and this lower part of the arm as little segments in like a machine. Right? Think of these as little pivot points. And if you think of your arm as machinery that just kind of wraps around itself, think about it like this, because then whenever you're translating a drawing such as this to your actual design, it's very similar overlapping lines. Right? So in visualizing it like this helps out a lot. The same thing with the wrists. You can visualize them like that as well. Like we have it like right here. If you visualize this as something that has a pivot point, it's easier to understand that the hand can move up, the hand can move down, but there's a limit to how far it can go. All right. So that's a mini lesson on arms. Hope that helps. Now let's. How do you draw a hand? Well, I guess we talked about hands yesterday too, I think. But let's show you guys the Pringles approach. So, I like to draw my hands like Pringles. Why? Because the Pringle shape is more indicative of what a hand is than a box. Because this already has the two little flat sides of the palm. It already has a connection point to my wrist. Then from here, I already have my middle, index, and other fingers. So I know that the middle of my hand is going to be where my middle finger is. One side of my hand is going to have two fingers, which is going to be my ring finger and my pinky finger. And then the other side is going to have my index finger going into my thumb. So one side gets a little bit of a little triangle part. And that's going to be for my thumb, right? Then I decide what I want to do with my fingers. So in this case, maybe I want like a crazy kung fu two-finger prong horn attack. So I'm going to draw this finger going forward. And I'm going to draw this finger over here going forward. And then this finger is going to be in the middle, like folded. And then the pinky is also going to be folded in. So we're not going to see that. And then from there, I just clean up my lines to find my wild, crazy monkey, horn, Kill Bill, five-finger pronged attack. And we call it the mantis. But that's essentially how I go about drawing hands. Now, if you want to learn about the structure behind like the hand and how I visualize it, it's like this. We have our little Pringles shape. Let's just consider this the hand like this for now. The middle is where my middle finger is going to go. So my middle finger is going to go here. Inside of my hand is my knuckles. So one of my knuckles is right there. Then one of these sides is going to have my index finger, or my ring finger and my pinky finger. One side is going to have my index finger and my thumb. The thumb is on its own little axis. So the knuckle's not even close to that little shape. So this whole section has to be added whenever you're drawing the thumb side, which can just be done by drawing a little tapered tube. Think about it as a tube. A tube into the midsection of our thumb, into our thumb. Right? So our thumb consists of 3 sections, and that's where our knuckle is right there. So it consists of a little knuckle section, one segment into our thumb. That's how we visualize our thumb. Our fingers, they are essentially 3 parts, right? But since I am not a very flexible person, I don't have access to flexibility in the top part of my fingers. So I technically consider them like 2.5. So I consider that the first 2, like these 2 sections, are equal length. Right? From my knuckle to the tip of my finger, and the knuckle's inside the hand, remember. It's not on top. The knuckle's here. So from here to my knuckle is the same length as from this knuckle to the top of my finger. So I can easily divide it into. Since the hand curves and some fingers are slightly bigger or smaller, you adjust accordingly. but that same ratio should fit. The fingers don't come out in a straight line. They come out at angles, right? They spread. They don't stay like this. They spread. So these are even a little bit too straight, but normally you just spread them out a little bit more. Now, once you have that, you really have everything you need to fill out your hand. So from here, you just got to give these little sticks volume. How fat do you want your fingers to be? So we draw the first knuckle into our little tube, goes down. We know that this section is 2 parts, so we got to draw another knuckle. And then we just connect those 2 parts too. We already went over shadows. We went over shadows a little earlier. So we're not going to go over shadows again. But this will eventually be on YouTube. Eventually. I haven't posted the last like 3 or 4. I'm sorry. I'm lazy. And League of Legends has a grasp on my attention. So I will do it eventually. Don't wake me up too late. Don't watch my last video. Oh no, I wonder what her last video is like for. Oh, it must be so suspenseful because she is a pretty girl. Oh. Okay, the next thing that you gotta remember is the webbing of your fingers. Right? There's webbing. Look at that little webbing that happens. And that happens because the bone, the knuckle, it drags the skin here, but the palm, because this is closer to the palm side has a little bit more surface, so therefore sometimes you get this webbing stuff. And to do that, just round out that, and then remember that your finger goes all the way to your knuckles, so your knuckles are inside your hand, remember? Little finger lines that lead down to your wrist, and your wrist comes out from there. So that's how you would draw hands from the bottom, or from the top. From the bottom, it's they have interesting parts too. So let's draw our Pringle shape. Then we're gonna find our middle. We're going to find our finger, our knuckle, and divide everything according to what we already know, right? We already know that we got to create the little segments for our thumb. And we got to make our knuckle lines right there. Now, the knuckle lines, okay, I know that everybody is very familiar with the little padding part that we have for our hands, right? Little squishy parts. Squishy, squishy, squishy. Okay, so all these things it's just your knuckle. That's like literally your knuckle right behind it. So that's why it's important to understand that your knuckles are there. That's your knuckles. That's just a squishy part with knuckles in it. So we already know that however big the knuckles are, that's going to be our padding part for our part of their hand. Now, we have the other squishy part, which is this part right here, that consists of 2 muscles, right? But we can just simplify that big section into one big pad. Papa. Then the other side also has an equal-sided pad into our wrist that has a nice big vein or tendon that just goes right in the middle. So we make that tendon. From here, we measure out our first section of our finger. That's going to be the same length. And then from there, we can create however wide you want those fingers spread out, right? Like, you can make it super like spread out if you want to, like. As long as you have your fingers starting at the right place, that's not going to be a problem. Now from there, we identify our middle knuckle at the mid halfway of our fingers, our third knuckle, and then we connect all the lines together. Yay! These little lines that you are going to now know and see, you're going to identify as things like the knuckle, and you'll start slowly identifying things like the little webbing in between these two, and so on and so forth. But this is just the most basic way to break down the hand so that it makes sense to you, right? What's wrong with this one hand? This one, well, I think the finger is just curving the wrong way, and they're like skinnier fingers. But you guys get the idea. Now, this can be applied to anything as well, like 3/4, Pringles. Let's twist the hand around a little bit more so the middle's right here. So we can have our middle finger. Our middle knuckle is about that long. The other fingers are going to be about that long. Middle knuckle's right there. The other knuckles are going to go around the hand. So I already know where my knuckles are going to be. Let's draw a person playing pool. So this person will be like making like a bridge with this finger. His thumb would probably be curling up, and there'd be the pool stick right there. So it's just a very easy way to map out your hands without stressing too much about like things that you don't need to stress out about. Hips and torso. We've been going around about that a lot lately, but that seems like just another excuse to reinforce it, right? So let's hips and torsos. Okay, hold on. I probably need to plug in my phone before it just dies on me. So just give me a second, everybody. How to draw clothing, huh? Well, clothing is a very extensive topic. Like, there's no way that I can actually describe how to draw like all clothing in one sitting. So we might not go over all clothing, but we can at least teach you how to draw some clothing. Okay, so we'll zoom in. So we'll draw torsos and then we'll teach you guys about clothing. How about that? Like how to actually clothe your characters. That'd be interesting. Let me take some coffee too. So how are you guys today? How are you guys? I don't ask you guys enough. Hi. If you guys are having a good day, leave me a little heart. If you guys are having a bad day, leave a comment and let me know why it's a bad day, because it shouldn't be a bad day. All right, let's do this. So, if you want to learn how to draw bodies and want to make it really simple on yourself, learn to turn a beanbag into a human torso. Learn to do this. Learn to visualize your beanbags like this. Why? Because this gives you all the information you require to be able to draw an anatomically correct human skeleton relatively easy. So whenever you're thinking of practicing and you want to learn how to do something like this, draw a ridiculous amount of beanbags in a whole page. Like make them all different shapes and sizes, right? Just fat ones, big ones, little ones, top heavy ones, bottom heavy ones, whatever. Just draw like a whole page of just beanbag heaven, overlapping in different directions, you know, stuff like that. And then go in and then turn these into little rib cages. From all different directions, from back, whatever. Identify the middle of the rib cage from the front or the back, because that one side is the spine, the other side is the sternum that takes you to your collarbone. So it's good to identify the middle of it anyways, regardless of what you're doing with it. And then you identify your hip bones. Like, think about these like underwear. It's like underwear for your beanbag. And that's all you got to do. Give these guys underwear. Okay? Once you give these guys underwear, it's going to tell you how your legs can come out from there. Right? If this one was from behind, let's do like a yoga pose. And this one, maybe the legs are just coming out from here. This one just seems like a regular. And then this one looks like a superhero type of thing. Like twisting his body around. So you start understanding little by little how a simple beanbag can help you like create a very structured character without much thought process to it, in whatever amount of distorted perspective you needed and stuff. Like that doesn't affect it at all. So it can also help you with your life drawing as well. You know, like instead of just seeing shadows and lighting, start seeing shapes and see if that actually helps you out. Ooh, Nyla Reyes. That is so cool. Tequila. Tequila. Love your art. Aw, thank you. Can you teach me how to make a mouth, please? Says Mr. Hago Kakaseka. Oh, you are a dry pooper. That's quite interesting. Okay. Yeah, but that seems like an interesting. That's an interesting one. Okay. So mouths. Mouths are very, very important, right? Because they dictate how people are going to represent themselves. You know, two people with the same smile can be very different depending on how you draw the inside of the mouth, for example. And I'm sorry about the fan, but it's incredibly hot, and I don't feel like being uncomfortable. So uh, I do apologize, and I am sincerely sorry if it's a very annoying, but it doesn't last long. It takes just a couple seconds, and it keeps me nice and cool. So meanwhile, I'm just going to set it up so you guys understand that it's the same thing. The mouth can go from something super pristine, like, yay, I have a perfectly beautiful smile, to the same mouth being like, you know, like very redneckish, right? Like, hee hee. Or we can have that same exact mouth be something really silly by just having like a tongue out. So you're only really limited by your imagination once you understand the basic concept of how to draw a mouth. Oh, let's scream the emo. Oh, wait, let's scream Matt the emo or Themo. Okay, he just said, scroll to this. You've helped me so much in like 5 minutes. Yay, that's awesome. Okay, so what I like to do, especially with cartoony type of faces, I like to do what is called the rubber band approach to a mouth. Okay? The rubber band approach considers that there's 2 points in which one single rubber band is going to be like played with. So you can start making really fun shapes as long as you have a rubber band point in one or the other, like one of the other extremes. It'll come out looking kind of like this. So you can just have fun playing with that, right? And then after you determine that, just add negative space to create different mouths inside. So if you create negative space here, now you have a happy smiley person. If you create negative space in different sections, you start getting different expressions. You can even get different species by just drawing like different things within them. And it doesn't have to be limited to cartoony things too. Like if you just take a little time to add detail, right, you can get pretty interesting levels of detail to these. Now, what trips you out, like some people a lot, is how do you place these sort of exercises onto an actual face? Well, you know, start drawing these exercises on faces. Even if it doesn't have to be like a fully detailed, like just draw a sphere and see what different shapes for a mouth do. Right? If you consider that each of these has a top and a bottom that is connected by your rubber band, It just becomes really easy to add things like tongues, teeth, because you're doing is just drawing inside of those confined limits now. So you have this limit, so now you get to do whatever you want with that side. Ah. And the more knowledge of anatomy you have from this point on, is what's going to allow you to take those mouths and make those into really cool things. All done with a big pen. Yeah, this is the pen I use. I love these pens. But this rubber band approach then later on goes to a more advanced version of it, which just goes about using, instead of points, you use flat sides. And then you connect those flat sides to create your mouth. Now, the reason that you use the flat sides is so you can determine the width of your lips as well. You go from inside line to inside line to outside line to outside line. And you can start creating a lot more interesting depth from just that simple flat side rubber band. So I've been trying to do that because I've been trying to improve my pinups, and the more I see like people's mouths and how important that is to draw like very iconic mouths, and I've been developing just different little fun ways that it makes sense to me, so that I can draw them like more interesting, more fun, more like dynamic. So when you're drawing these things, if you're drawing them from the side like a profile or a 3/4, remember that the mouth goes around a the circular shape, so it has a curvature to it. So if you have a point here and a point here, but you want to show roundness because you're going in 3/4, you go around your shape, around. The same thing happens with the thickness of the upper lip. You have to set a middle ground, set it to connect to your endpoint, and then this side has to give you roundness, so it goes around, and it would curve up there, but it goes around into where your bottom lip connects, negative space, and then you create this lip going around again, going around to this other one. So these have shape, right? These have volume. These are essentially little tubes, but you're faking that depth by just simply applying the curves in the right places. The same concept for this applies to eyes. It's exactly the same concept, just applied differently. This can be a mouth or this can be an eye because it's the same concept. And I'll show you guys. Like if you can draw an eye, you can draw a mouth. You just have to place the lines in a different place. right? In one instance, the lip has depth, so you draw the shape inside. So you draw the lips inside. Doop, doop, doop. With an eye, the only thing inside is the eyeball. So you build outside. That's the only difference between a mouth shape and an eye shape. So what you do with that information is up to you. But once you start visualizing things like that, your characters are going to have a much deeper curvature lines to like their eyes, their eyelids. You're going to start having so much more depth and so much more life to them, because you'll understand that these are supposed to be objects intertwining with each other, right? They're like, they're, for example, this eyelid right here, it has to go around the sphere that's right there. That's where my eyeball is. So it goes around, and then this bottom eyelid has to kind of match, and then there's going to be negative space. So you end up with a situation where you have your eyelid wrapping around your sphere, and you still have negative space because this all connects in the back right there. So it wraps around and connects in the back, but you're already seeing this at an angle, so you wouldn't see that part. So that's why you get that gap. But it's the sphere, and that's your eyebrows, or your eyelid going around your eyeball on the top and the bottom. It just wraps around. It creates this little tiny curvature that is so important. It's so darn important that you like identify this curvature if you want to make your eyes look really, really voluminous. Like, it's such a minuscule thing, but it's so overpassed and overlooked by so many artists. Like, this has curvature for a reason, right? This bottom, if I draw an eye, this bottom eyelid has curvature only because the eyeball is spherical and it's going around it. And then this top lid also has a curvature only because it's going around your eyeball and it's wrapping around your eyeball. Right? So when this opens up, what happens? So if the lower eyelid opens up more, it gets closer to the bottom. Therefore, going around the shape, it gets a little bit wider. Over here, the slit opens up, still going around our eye, so it creates a wider opening for our eye. So we see more of the metal. But it always goes around. So when you're drawing your eyebrows, they go around and they extend out. Bottom eyelids, they go around. Okay? Then the makeup that women put on, sometimes they manually extend an eyebrow, like eyelash, by like the way of their cat eye, to make them even look longer. But that's with makeup. That's extra. That's additional. Okay? Okay. Let's see. Next question. You guys feel free to ask it while I take a sip of coffee. Jesus loves me. Well, that's good to know. I like it when people love me. Ba-ba-bum. How to draw clothing. Oh dear God. I did not mention the clothing part when I drew. Okay, so let's draw some basic clothing so that he can just be calm because he's going a little nutty here. Uh, so we're gonna have our beanbag, right? Our beanbag torso. Really quick, but so how do we add clothing to our beanbag clothing, like torso? And let's just draw some basic legs too. Right. All right. So we have our basic leggies, and we're gonna have some arms. We're gonna have one arm being all sassy like, and then the other arm is gonna be like right here, right? Bam! Like it's all me, baby. All right. All right. So how are we gonna put clothing on our dude or dudette? It can still be whichever one we want. So the trick to adding clothing is to visualize these things as, and repeat after me, like I always say, you got to visualize these things as 3D objects. So your whole body is a three-dimensional shape that changes form depending on what surface you have going on top of you. So the first step is to identify all the perspective lines that you need, right? Just to be able to understand that these things have a front and a back. Some people require less lines. I normally just draw the lines wherever there's going to be a connection point with a piece of clothing, right? If I know that I want to draw a certain type of clothing, I make sure that those little sections have a nice, even perspective going around the whole thing. There you go. So now that I have that, now I can start just drawing things on top of these surfaces. So once I have this segmented to this point, we can do whatever we want. Do you guys want to make this into like I don't know, a pompadour wearing little prince wrestler with cowboy boots? Sure, let's try to do that. Okay, so for that we need big poofy shoulders. We already have the shoulders, so we just have to draw the beginning point of our poofy sleeve and draw our poofy sleeve going around because it's still a three-dimensional object. Draw the poofy sleeve going around our arm. Then we can draw the poofy sleeve on the other side too. We already have this side, so we just kind of visualize how big it's supposed to be on this other side. And then we just draw it. Let's give him a cape too. A cape would wrap around the neck, right? Which is essentially where the collarbone is. So we find our collarbone within our rib cage by just going up from our divot and the bottom, and then we have our collarbone. Our collarbone would be exactly where a cape would go. So we just follow our collarbone. The cape would wrap around the back, so it technically goes around our neck. A hoodie would be a very similar thing. It would go around and wrap around your back. Now we gotta finish off his shirt. So we gave him a cape. Let's give him like, I don't know, a medal. Um, let's give him a fancy little like shirt that flares up. Around his belly. With buttons that connect like this. And towards this end, they're like stretching really, really hard. So we're going to add some tension lines. Like more tension lines, the closer to get to its belly. So it just feels like it's stretching really, really far. Now we got to give it the luchador like wrestling pants. So it's going to be like he has a beer belly as well. So the beer belly is going to cover a little bit of that upper part. And then it's going to just be like a G-string that goes around his hips. He might have a lightning bolt. All right. So now we have that, and then we're going to give him cowboy boots. So we're going to go down his hips to his legs. I have explained how to draw legs in the past. So I think in the past week, I've done like 2-3 videos on legs. Like I think yesterday's was on legs too. So eventually at some point I'll have, actually no, the leg one is on YouTube. So you guys can look up the leg one on YouTube. That's just going to teach you more about legs than I can teach you in like 5 minutes of me trying to draw legs. So we have our top, our thigh connecting to our kneecap, and then we have our bottom. Now we got to come up with cowboy boots. And I'm not exactly sure what cowboy boots look like, so I'm going to make them pointy. And they're going to wrap around my leg. Feel free to criticize my cowboy boot drawing potential. I need to go and like look up reference for this. Now they look like Wonder Woman boots. I know they're pointy, right? Are they pointy? I'm gonna give it like spurs. But are cowboy boots pointy? I forget. Anyways, now it has Wonder Woman boots. With his maybe he's a DCU like fan. There is a character called like Black Knight or something like that, or Blue Knight. So that could be the top part. Have his little Superman cape. Let's see. Ooh, we can give him like little Batman, like wrists. Yeah, yeah, I like that. He's gonna be the Justice League all in one. So as you can see, I'm literally just wrapping my character around and going around my character, creating elements on top of his basic structure. That's why it's important to be able to break down your characters into structural forms. That way you can actually give yourself the ability to do these sort of things. if you are not understanding what the structure is and you're just going in and drawing things visually, you can still get really good results, but it's going to be harder for you to be able to understand like how to manipulate that later on. Like you can get really cool results by drawing like step by step, little segment by segment. And, I've seen like professional level, like even tattoo artists that are like that, and then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of visualizing it. And for example, for a person like me, uh, I could go in and draw things like this as well, but it's just more fun for me to visualize it as a 3D element as opposed to just lines and shadows. Like, to me, it's just much more fun drawing and knowing the structure of things than just drawing the things. How do you draw with pen? Aren't you scared of mistakes? Not at all. But why would I be afraid of mistakes? That's how I learn. Like, me making a mistake means that I don't understand something enough. Therefore, it gives me a reason to draw that over and 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 over. So it's not a negative thing for me to find something bad in my art. It's actually quite beneficial. And I look forward to like the days that I find something blatantly obvious that's wrong with my stuff, because then it allows me, a chance to get better at it. So we're gonna draw another character real fast because I want to draw another one that we can just dress up real fast. So we'll draw an action pose. Draw a slightly foreshortened hand. Into like a slightly angled battle pose. Like, you're going down, punk. Alright, there you go. And we'll give this character a hat. Going around his head. Right. Okay, so let's dress this character up a little bit. I kind of get the impression that this character is kind of like a steampunkish dude. So we're gonna give him some goggles on top of his head. Maybe like a little lamp. Then we're gonna give him like a cool glove, like an infinity gauntlet type of thing. Big, thick fingers. Into our Pringles shape that gives us our bottom. And our knuckle line is inside, so that's what gives us these little bumps. So we have our glove. Then he's gonna have like some shoulder padding, so something going around his shoulder is going to be coming up. I don't know what it is yet. I'm just gonna leave it like a little blank armory shape. Our forearm would be around here. If we wanted to give him some armor as well, it would just wrap around that thicker part of the forearm behind the hand, and that would connect to our arm. Now, steampunk people have like coats and stuff, so I'm going to draw the upper part of the coat that wraps around your head. Wraps around your head, right? And then this is going to be like flapping in the wind. So I need to create a nice flowy line that's going to be kind of matched on both sides. And then create an extra line for how the cape is going to be folding. There you go. So now we have our coat. We have the inside line of our coat, so we can trace that. We have the outside line of our coat, and then we have the overlapping folding parts. Boom. So now we have our coat. It's flapping in the wind. If this hand is going to be matching this one, we're going to have to give it a gauntlet as well. So we just thicken up all the fingers. And now we have that side of the hand. Let's come up with the next overlapping part, which is the chest torso area. In this case, I'm going to change a little bit of the pose just to create like a more balanced sense to him. Since we created the cape, that kind of throws everything into off balance. So I'm going to change the legs to make it look like he's jumping. And then that way, it's going to enhance the shape of the cape as opposed to fighting it. So to change that, I just literally went back to my beanbag shape, found my hips, and then just changed the direction of where my legs go. I'll find out how far back I want my feet to be. And then just come up with the rest of the details. Let's see, what kind of pants we want to give him. Let's give him shorts. Into some high socks. Into some Timberland boots. Now this other arm, we got to figure out where the shoulder would be. Around here. Which way the arm would be folding that way. And how the rest of the forearm would be folding. And you get that nice, fun way of dressing up your characters just really quickly. Like, you don't really have to think much of it once you understand the structure. Like, this could just be just as easily been anything else, you know? Even when you're just drawing, like, a character that's just torso, whenever you're drawing your characters, just think of those structures and then just draw around it, like we all used to do in like the school books and stuff like that. You know, like drawing things on top of a, you know, like a drawing is a lot easier than having to think about drawing everything on your own. So think of your structures as separate than your actual, like the clothing part. Imagine you're drawing all your characters naked and then you dress them up after. Because the same thing applies to hairstyles. Right? Hairstyles or any like extra elements that you add to your art, like accessories or anything like that. All that is applied after you are secure and happy with how the structure of your drawing is. So wrapping things around your characters is going to be the way to dress them up, in short. Okay. Any tip for abstract compositions? Well, it's abstract. Just there you go. Draw a random thing and then figure out something to draw within that. That's pretty much the whole concept of abstraction, right? The whole concept of an abstract drawing is to have a certain level of randomness and then make something cool from that. Something that's going to speak to some people, it might not speak to anyone. That's why people like, Jason Pollock and stuff like that are incredibly famous and popular. And some people consider that complete garbage. I think their marketing genius is like commendable. Like that is the power of understanding the value of your art, right? Is being able to sell yourself with no matter what you draw. But drawing just random things and then coming up with things to draw for them is like one of my favorite exercises. So if you have to draw 100 of them, that's kind of cool, man. If you start coming up with like just add a little bit of color contrast to your drawing, and then you came up with something super dope that only you have come up with, because that never existed even in your own mind 5 seconds ago. So it's doing compositions like that is it's fun. They don't really have much purpose other than like telling you how cool you are. But it's a good test and measurement if you have to do an assignment, with something like that for it. Let's give this guy a scar because he looks like he's badass. Okay, time for you to go and practice. Hey, well, thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching the stream. Yeah, you guys feel free to ask whatever you guys want. Sent 13 mini speakers. What is that? What's a mini speaker, and why did I get 13? See, for example, drawing random shit like that is some of my favorite exercises to do. Like, I love taking random shapes that I draw and then trying to figure out something cool to make out of them. And the first thing that comes to mind in this case scenario is a cool tiki mug. That is the first thing that came to mind by seeing that. And when you have a drawing block, or when you have like a lack of things to draw, and you just feel like drawing really bad, but you just don't know what to draw, just do that. Draw a random shape and see what you can draw from it. Mhm. It is one of the most fun exercises to do when you are in a rut. And sometimes all you need is just a really nice, fun little sketch to get you out of a horrible, like week long, month long, year long rut. People often ask me like, how do you get past the like art block? And essentially, like all you do is you hammer through it, man. Like that's pretty much it. Like you just hammer that shit through. Like like at that point, it's like your will of how much you want to draw and create, as opposed to how much you don't want to do it. And you know, uh, like that is essentially what it comes down to every single time you have art block. You can either create or not. Doesn't matter if you create bad, as long as you're creating, right? Like at the end of the day, like that's pretty much all you have to really worry about. There you go. All right. So looks like the candle from Beauty and the Beast. Hey, he kind of does, huh? Be our guest, be our guest. I don't really know the rest. uh, let's see. Looks like it's you again. I last joined when you were making dad pinup girl sketches, and it was a blast. Hey, Courtney Yard and Company. Well, thank you for joining this time around. This time we are just drawing random shit that people ask. And so far, it's been pretty interesting. We have had basic exercises. The Stuzy logo that I couldn't draw from memory. Went through lighting, some anatomy and posing, some arms, some hands, some how to dress your character, how to draw mouths. It's been quite a day so far, and we're almost close to the end of it, but we still have time for some more stuff. So, keep on asking. Blood-stained axe. How are you? I'm doing fantastic today. Uh, Crave for paint. I remember when you first got the gig for 21 Artists or whatever, 21 Draw, and yeah, that wasn't. Ah, man, you guys, my fans, are the ones that got me that. Like, you guys are. I'm most beautiful death from Instagram. I have a feeling that I should know that name, so I am very sorry, but I cannot remember. Okay, so okay, Courtney and Company. Last time we talked about absurd posing and mental health loneliness, and I related a lot. Oh yeah, that's my shit. That's my gig. Okay, so other exercises that I like to do. I'm doing a lot better, thank you though. Exercises that I like to do are doing random things or faces that could essentially be a face shape and then creating a really weird middle line to it. Now, what does this do? It allows me for a lot of fun. Oh, we named the elephant with the top hat. Yes. What was his name? Phil? Hold on. Like we gotta go back and find them. Oh my god, it's been a long time since we did that. Yeah, Tom. Tom the elephant. Tom the elephant was also all right. So Tom the elephant was pretty cool. So for this exercise, what I like to do is draw a head shape and then draw a random like line in the middle and then try to see if you can create a character that has those midlines. So if the midline for the mouth would be right here, probably. Then you have a really weird chin. So let's see what our character will look like. If we followed that middle line. And that was the middle line, not the edge of the nose. That's the middle of the nose, you remember? So that would lead down to his lips, his cheekbone, the bottom of his mouth, and then his chin is like protruding, dude, into like a double chin thing. Then his mouth would, if it's moving up to where his cheekbone is over here, his mouth would like extend maybe a little bit more and start curving up. Because then this is having a shape. This is gonna have a shape leading onto his chin. And then he's just a very disproportionate man. But it still kind of looks right, right? All right. So that's one down the drain. Now let's do this one. Um, okay, so if this is our midline and that's our ear, or let's go with a different approach. Let's set this as the eye line. So we have our ear. A lot of people have a lot of trouble figuring out their eye socket line, then their cheekbone line, and then the chin line. So many people have a lot of problems with this because it's not really taught. So this little line inside of your face on a normal average face, it's normally more like this, right? What this is essentially the landmarks of your cheekbone, your temple that leads to the back of your head. And then inside of here is your eye socket, your nose canal, and the curvature for your mouth. So this line right here that you develop is something that you can actually use to map out your characters. In this case, we have our cheekbone into our chin. And that's going to tell us that our cheekbone's here, so therefore our nose canal has to be right there for our skull. right? So that's where our nose is going to come out. Now, if our nose is right there and it's that large, that means that our mouth has to be around here and it has to be within this range. Because the skull essentially is telling me that this is how our skull is in our character. And if my jaw has the point right here and I have my end point, so I already know the angle of my jaw. That can't change because I already have that. So then I have to make sure that the rest of the mouth matches up with that. It doesn't seem like the mouth is open because it's not hinging towards the back. So the mouth would be relatively closed. So that means that the teeth would both be pretty much touching. And then from there I can just come up with a mouth by creating the rubber band approach, going around my shape, my two endpoints. I already know where my teeth are. So now I just draw my mouth. The lip has depth, and then it goes on to my chin. And then I can draw whatever eye shape that I want for my eyes. So another fun way that you can practice doing faces, that are not necessarily conventional, is to draw a face, draw the inside lines, consider the first gap to be your eye socket, the second curve to be your cheekbone, and then into your chin. And if you do that, just play around with head shapes, be it regular ones or random ones, and then give yourself those peaks and see how your face comes up. You're gonna start getting familiar with what looks good. For example, the chin right here looks gigantically like going forward. So I'm gonna draw an old lady instead. Could you draw how to draw feet? Oh, we're running out of space though. Uh, and I kind of like this concept right now, so I think I might just finish up the page by drawing faces like this. And because it's an exercise I haven't done in a while, so it's just fun for me to see what I can do with that. So if that's the cheek, that's the mouth, then that means she's smiling because the cheeks are going up. If this is the chin, that means this is her neck, or her neck, his neck. Let's give it an actual face. If this is the break of the nose, so I know that my nose canal has to be around here. So let's give this guy like a pointy nose up. There you go. See, you get interesting shapes. This could be used a lot for caricatures. This could be used a lot to just, lock down those extra little levels of mapping out that you haven't gotten yet. I like using my masks method more, but just as easily you can just map it out from the side like this, right? It's not better, worse, it's just different. So if one of them speaks to you, try doing that for a while and see how it comes out. It's just a different approach to the same problem. How do we map out the face to create the most accurate version of our style that we want to achieve? Okay. Sometimes it takes understanding things like squiggly lines and turning that in. Sometimes it takes abstract thought to be able to create some things that are like out of the norm. But, either if you approach it like this or methodical, like I like to do it with shapes, or you just like to draw at the edges of your, drawings and then come up with things like that. Every way that you draw and create is just perfectly naturally okay. There's no wrong way to go about it. There is, however, more effective ways to create things. So keep that in mind as you go about. The reason that I do these streams is because I struggled quite a bit when I was learning, and I didn't really have many people to ask and to seek out and to essentially give me answers that I had questions to. So I decided that at one point, whenever I was able to actually impart this knowledge with people, I would do it, without charging people or without making people have to like go through barriers to be able to get that knowledge. So I gladly share my knowledge with all of you. And, when the moment comes that I actually launch my own school, that'll be more geared towards people that want to make it into a financial career instead of just learning how to do it. And that'll be, that's where I can make a little bit of money just to be able to maintain this lifestyle. But until that happens, all my knowledge will be absolutely accessible to everybody. And even then, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to be told and like held down with chains to not just want to share all that knowledge with everyone, anyways. So at one point or another, I'm just going to share it anyways with everybody. So yeah, that's why I need a financial partner in my business, because I just want to give everything out for free. I have like little amount of care if I make money from my knowledge or not. But other people that look out for me say that I should to a certain extent. So we'll see. That's down the line. If you do want to support though, and you want to feel like you got something cool out of it, I do have 2 books out for sale. There's Pinups, which is a collection of all my beautiful women that I have drawn over the last 20 years. So beautiful little ladies like this, both digitally, as finished up rendered pieces, or be it just little sketchy doodles. That's, a 60-page book just full of them. And also I have Coffee Break Doodles, which is a collection of my favorite sketches that I've done over the last 20 years. And I just made them into a little collection because, people wanted to actually buy something from me at some point. So I decided to put together that book so you guys can have a way to support me and help me if you do feel inclined to do so, and if you learned anything from it. Now, getting me to that 100,000 follower YouTube mark is my absolute goal for this coming year. So now, if you don't want to send money, I don't care. But if you like what I do and what I say and how I teach it, and you don't follow my YouTube channel yet, I honestly don't know what to say, because that's literally where everything gets posted. That is essentially the hub central for all my teachings. So I highly recommend that you check it out. I highly, highly recommend that you go check out the YouTube channel, because it has over 100 videos. Like I checked, it's like over 150 videos now with so much just random knowledge and like targeted towards everyone, like skill level wise. So go check it out. Seriously, go check it out. You guys will not be disappointed. And if you guys do learn something from it, just subscribe to it. And that's all I ask. That's all I ask. All right. So I will finish doing that little filling up of the things later. Bam. Thank you all so much for subscribing to my channels, for listening to me, and for being here and spending time with me. Because honestly, this is some of my favorite times of the day. I love spending time with my followers, even though I don't get to talk to you guys as much while I'm teaching you. It's still a very valuable time that I consider very, very important to me. So, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I will probably see you guys here tomorrow for another stream. Remember, from 10:30 to 11:30, that's when I start. So we can go anywhere from there. This one went on pretty long, so yeah. So that I'll put this one on YouTube like as soon as this goes out because I just really enjoyed this one. But the other ones will come later. I promise. I promise. But until then, have a good one. Where's Little Rod? I knocked you up. Little Rod says bye. Bye. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And go subscribe to Big Rod, because otherwise he's going to throw me around some more. Okay? All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.